Introduce the film that we're here to talk about, which is called Tigerland, and you're going to get a sneak preview of some of it. And here to talk with us is Jessica Beatus, who's Vice President of Standards and Social Good for Discovery, Inc. In this role, Jessica spearheads Discovery's global social good portfolio, including cause marketing, corporate social responsibility, philanthropy, and sponsorships and employee impact. So that's a lot. Jessica is also here as the creator and program director for Project C.A.T, which she's going to tell you about, which is relating to tigers and is a partnership with the World Wildlife Fund. In addition to social impact, Jessica leads all standards and practices, policy creation and review processes for original and acquired content across Discovery's networks. She has done a lot of things before that, but since we're focusing on that, we'll move on. Next to Jessica, and also representing Discovery, is John Barden, who serves as Vice President of Development and Production, Documentaries and Specials for Discovery Channel and Science Channel. Recent projects include the Emmy-winning Sonic C, Emmy-nominated Racing Extinction, Rancher, Farmer, Fisherman, First in Human, Killing the Colorado, and the upcoming Take Back the Harbor, which I got to work together with John on. Yeah. Before this, Barden co-founded the Public Good Projects and served as producer on Sleepless in America. And also, importantly and interestingly, I learned, he has a PhD in neuroscience from Weill Cornell Medical College, and has studied recovery from severe brain injury and disorders of consciousness, so he might have like much more to contribute here than we thought. And next to him is the inimitable Ross Kaufman. Let's hear it for Ross. Ross is an Academy Award-winning filmmaker, having won the Oscar for Born into Brothels, which won a whole bunch of other awards. And he also directed an award-winning film called E-Team, along with Katie Chevigny. He made a really incredible short film called Fire with Fire that is about an oncology unit at the University of Pennsylvania as they attempt to develop a cure for leukemia, and it's really beautiful. And he is also the creative director of Fictionless, which is a media company based in New York City. We are here today to talk about Tigerland and the origins of the film and the partnership between Ross, also producer Zan Parker is here, and the filmmakers and Discovery and those who are charged with producing content at Discovery. So first, let's start, if you don't mind, Jessica, if you could tell us a little bit about sort of the point, how this project really originated, beginning with sort of Discovery's corporate philosophy and why tigers.
First of all, can you guys hear me without the microphone? Not all you, the microphone? You got it. Then you got the microphone. Hey everybody, yeah, I'm Jessica Beatus. Thanks guys for coming out on Saturday morning. I know this is an intimate crowd. So yeah, this is pretty simple. Discovery has always been, a purpose-based brand, and we have been telling stories of the natural world for over 30 years. It became very clear to us, as I'm sure to all of you, that our world is in a pretty dangerous place right now, and we wanted to make sure that we had a direct impact project and something where we could really put a stake in the ground and ensure that there would be future stories to tell. I had the great pleasure of actually partnering with John in 2015, and we aired a film called Racing Extinction that Fisher Stevens, who's also a producer on Tigerlands, worked on, where we sounded the alarm for the mass extinction crisis, and we ran that film in our 220 territories and countries around the world. And as part of that film, we partnered with World Wildlife Fund, and we helped translocate 35 rhinos in 5 different countries to start new populations. And very quickly after we did that, we filmed it, and it was super cool. And then really soon after, one of the rhinos gave birth, and suddenly we saw that we really were having direct impact on the population of rhinos that was dwindling. And so we wanted to do more, just we got a little bit of a taste of it. And so I worked closely with WWF, and we started looking and saying, well, celebrities were paying a lot of attention to elephants. There are about between 400 and 500,000 elephants left on the planet. Then we started looking at rhinos again, and there are about 30,000 rhinos left in the wild. And then we started talking about tigers, and we were just shocked that there were about 3,200 tigers left in the wild. Tigers are the most popular animal in the world, most popular mascot, really deeply embedded in our culture, across cultures. And nobody was really paying attention to this, and it just seemed like this crazy thing that nobody was paying attention. And tigers are also apex predators, and so the more we learned about it, when you protect tigers, you're protecting an entire ecosystem, you're protecting that community, you're protecting the other endangered species that live there, and for clean water and clean air. And it just became really obvious that we needed to get involved. And so in 2016, we launched Project C.A.T, which is Conserving Acres for Tigers. We started with supporting 1 million acres of land in India and Bhutan, and supporting everything from rangers there, all kinds of security measures, camera traps, community engagement, making sure they had adequate prey, all kinds of technology. And it really worked. And tigers have actually doubled in that initial landscape in just a matter of a couple years. They're cats, and so when they're protected, they breed pretty fast, and we were like, this is pretty cool. And then we started doing all kinds of marketing partnerships. This is year 2 of our Rag and Bone partnership, and we partnered with Alex and Ani, and we've partnered with got tons of children's lines, and we've just done a ton of partnerships to raise money, and we do a lot with our consumers, and we educate consumers across We Own the Dodo. We started doing a lot of pieces about saving the wild with the dodo, and we've raised money from 82 countries, and we've got consumers all over the world who are caring about tigers. And the best part about caring about tigers is we're protecting the planet, and we're also dealing with climate change without talking about climate change, which has been a really big success for me, because not everybody in this country especially agrees on how to manage that. But all of that being said, since the success of the project, we've doubled the area. We're now in more acres, another 1 million acres in India and in Bangladesh. And John and I had been talking for a number of years and talking with the leadership of Discovery about how do we own this in a bigger way. And the most obvious reason why we want to save tigers is so we can tell stories about tigers. And telling those stories was going to be incredibly important. And so that's how we came to be here today. But I think we just wanted to show you quickly, just a quick little trailer of what Project C.A.T is.
Share with us a little bit about then specifically the film that we're going to show a sneak peek of momentarily. Specifically the genesis and beginnings and process of making that film together with an independent filmmaker, and how that may or may not be inverse to what we often see. And for those in the audience who might not know what the two models are, if you can kind of take us through that.
Yeah, sure. So as Jessica was saying, this initiative was growing in the company and was getting more and more important, and was clearly going to be, if not, the focus of corporate attention and social good, one of only a couple. And so it really was a question of how can we support this initiative with great content. And I think that is unique in that oftentimes filmmakers develop films, they bring them to you, they pitch you, you love the idea, you love the characters, you want to make the film. And by the way, there's an impact campaign associated with that. And as a platform, you do what you can to find the resources to support it, to help them do that. But what I love about this process is that it was driven by actual work on the ground that the company was doing. And so that was the lead, and the content could be about the content. So, what I was tasked with doing by Jessica, by her team, on the Project C.A.T side, was just making a great film. And so that was very freeing for me as a creative executive to just be told, make a great film about tigers. And so we started talking to a lot of different filmmakers. We saw a lot of different ideas. One of those was the project that we are making with Ross. And I think what I love about it, and Ross, you should really talk about it, is that it's about our love of tigers and as seen through characters and through people. So I wouldn't call it a topical film. It's not a film about tigers and the plight of tigers as much as it's about really some incredible people who love and protect tigers. And so, you know, no one finds characters like that better than Ross and Zan and the team. So, you know, I am excited, really excited for this film. It's getting pretty far along, and you're going to see a little bit of it. But, you know, it was really cool to get the opportunity to make a film that's part of this really large, impactful corporate campaign, but to have the film be able to exist as, you know, a piece of content that could stand on its own and that people would come to and watch because it's a great film, not because, you know, it's part of an initiative. So, you know, that I think, I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like as a result, it's been a really great process, and we've been able to focus on what would make the best film.
How about we roll a clip and then hear from you?
I just have one question.
Okay.
What other filmmakers did you talk to?
We'll talk later. Yeah.
So let's roll the clip.
It's blinding. I'll never be able to shoot again.
I'm just so taken by even that clip, and it's extraordinarily cinematic, and it's extraordinarily human, and it doesn't feel like a piece of branded content or a PSA for an organization. Ross, maybe you could talk about the genesis of the project for you, and specifically as an independent filmmaker and a storyteller. You know, when a giant corporation comes to you and says, we want you to make a film about X, you know that filmmaking is a journey and you can't promise how it's going to turn out necessarily. So what happened?
What happened? I'll try to be short. A production company called Radical Media came to me and they said, Ross, we have an idea. Well, we have development money for a film about tigers. I said, tigers? I've done films in brothels and in war zones and about cancer. I'm not like an animal guy. And I thought, why are they calling me? And so I went home and I thought about it. And my 6-year-old was playing with like cutout tigers. And he was sort of telling me about tigers and how they're going extinct, and because I didn't have any ideas. And then I thought, well, I never was interested in the poaching movie, even though there's some great movies about poaching, and you know, they're tough, they're very depressing, but they're important. But I wasn't interested in that, so I just came up with this idea: what if we did something that was positive and beautiful, and sort of about the majesty of the animal, and also something maybe lyrical, maybe with animation, and just something that, you know, and this clip, even though it's you know, about an autopsy, to me, it's beautiful. His sentiment about the tiger, and you know, he has a little humor. It goes along with the rest of the film. So anyway, I came and I sort of gave them the idea, knowing that they would never do this. And they said, well, we love it. And they said, and Discovery loves it, and we want to do it. And I thought, oh my God, I have to do a film about tigers now. But it was amazing. So we developed this idea. Zan and I got together, and we found the characters, and I don't think at any point Discovery ever said no, which was really bizarre, because I had never done a commission before, where a network comes to me and asks me to do a film. It's always like doing independent films and then selling them. And so I was concerned about that. And we made the film, we're making the film. And so far, it's been a great experience, because there's been nothing but positive creative input. And our vision is actually coming to fruition. And it's been incredible. So this idea of branded content, Zan and I do branded content. You do branded content. We all do it to make a living. But I think the branded content we do sort of goes along with this, in that we try to bring the core of the emotional story even to branded content. So it doesn't matter what the form is. It's all about the story. And yeah, you guys have been great.
That's awesome that it was great, but I'm sure you also experienced some challenges along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that hearing about like some of the challenges you might have faced and how you navigated them together. And in particular, John had mentioned on the phone that, during early cuts and rough cut screenings that Jessica also weighed in. Jessica's not a filmmaker, or actually she is, but because she has made films. But in her current role, that's not what she's bringing to the table. And again, like as a filmmaker, you might be like, that's I don't want to hear those kinds of. So can we talk about that a little?
For sure. I mean, the challenges. I mean, there's every day there's challenges. I'm my own greatest challenge. But no, I'm not. I'm okay at taking notes. I like being collaborative. But usually what happens is I get a note and my first reaction is, no, it's my, not my film, but it's just I don't see it. But then I take it in, and it takes me a bit to sort of process those notes and try to, see if they actually do make sense. Usually Zan is telling me, Ross, it does make sense. And I go, no, it doesn't make sense. And in the end, it usually does make sense. And I mean, you talk about challenges. I mean, there's always challenges. There's always different voices in the room saying different things. But in the end, I've been pretty fortunate that so far, like I said, so we're almost done with the film, but we're still making it. So it's going to be a real challenge creatively getting to the finish line. It always is.
Jessica,
No,
sorry,
I was
Ross.
just going to say that, so there are always challenges, there's always notes that other people will give, but for the most part, it's been very similar to the other films I've made as an independent filmmaker, for the most part.
So it seems like, I mean, a best case scenario is when a filmmaker is supported by the company or a broadcaster or distributor that they're working with to bring their vision to life. I thought maybe, Jessica, it might be helpful to hear from you about like, in what ways were you contributing in your role as, well, it was a big title. Yeah. Okay.
It's all good.
In that role.
Yeah, look, I think, Ross said it best, which is the purpose of doing a project like this is to ensure we can tell stories. If we don't adhere to kind of the most important, covenant that we have with our audience, which is to tell these stories and to explore curiosity, then we've failed. And, the last thing, that I or my senior leadership want to do is to go to John and say, we're making a film about Project C.A.T. We're doing great work. Go film what we're doing, and we're going to tell everybody the story, and no one's going to watch or care but me. That's not helpful. The point of having more and more content is being able to reach people and have them fall in love and hopefully have them participate with us and have more impact. And so, for Ross and Zan and the team that went out, it was really in finding the characters and where the story was. On my side, it was really just about bringing the context around it. And so some of the notes were just about how do we do what we know when we do our research on why people will care about tigers. We do it best when we're telling great stories and when we're giving them information. We have to get that emotion and the information. And so I think that really the majority of the notes were really just around putting us in a sense of place and understanding how things got to be as bad as they were and how there is hope and why there is hope. And so I think it was just a little bit more of putting in a little bit of footnotes almost into the film just to contextualize it. Other than that, the passion of these characters and just the imagery and the story itself is what hopefully captures the audience. There wasn't, there was not, in my opinion, and again, as somebody who did work on films in a previous career, I didn't give a lot of notes. I don't think 3 notes is a lot of notes. I don't know that it wasn't. This wasn't like no, there was no throwing my hands up, being like, this isn't it. That was never the sense. It was always, we were always moving on the right track together.
Well, I think we look at this pretty similarly in that, I think when the network is doing their job right, they have they have picked a filmmaker to make a film or commissioned something or whatever it is because it's the right person to make the right film for what you want. And if you make a mistake, then you have to give a lot of notes. But if you make the right choice and you put the right team together and the filmmaker puts the right team together, then you shouldn't have to give a ton of notes. You should have to guide. You should have to give direction, what's best for your network as opposed to somewhere else. But it shouldn't be like you're in there making the film with them. I mean, that's sort of the point of doing this job well, is knowing when to, step back. And I think, if I felt a responsibility in the process, sort of on your behalf and also with you, it's that looking strategically at how is this company going to maybe use the film, right? The company I work for. So, you know, if we want to be able to take the film into, you know, non-film festival contexts to raise awareness and things like that, you want it to have certain elements that help people understand within the film what's going on. And so, you know, I think Ross comes to us and he says, you know, don't freak out, but we've fallen madly in love with a guy in Russia. It's going to be all, you know, it's going to be a lot of subtitles. You know, your audience is going to have to read, but trust us, you're going to see this in like 6 months. You're going to see stuff with him, but you're going to love it. And so we said, okay, we trust you, because that's why we decided to do this. So, you know, it's about saying yes to that and then looking at it and saying, okay, well, you know, he's done that incredibly well. What conversation can we have about, you know, what would help this be even more successful for Discovery? And that's been very fruitful, and I've never felt from the network side like there was animosity toward that. It was always, you know, a partnership.
Do we want to, let's look at the other clip, because you all are in a very special position to see not one but 2 clips of the not yet finished film. And then we can talk a little more. And I don't know if we're supposed to open up for questions. We're not. Oh, okay. Let's roll the clip.
Any
So see, Ross isn't bullshitting when he says he's not an animal guy. He doesn't even know what a frog sounds
I
like.
mean, I love animals. I just don't make movies about them too often.
But interestingly, though, because you make movies about humans generally, but when I finished, I got to watch the film, and I immediately called the team, including Zan and Ross, and said I loved the characters. And by characters, that's also including this tigress and her cubs that are featured in the film. And I thought it was extraordinary. And just speaking to the what John said about bringing on the right filmmaker for the right project, that seems clear in the finished product. We have some more time to keep talking, though. No questions. Oh, questions. Sorry. Okay. Is there anything you guys wanted to talk about before I see if anyone has a
I
question?
guess the only thing is, you know, these issue-driven films are sometimes really boring. Let's all face it. Like, they can really be like, a drag, you know, they're all about the issue and the issue and the issue. And while I think the issue is really at the core of this film and, you know, some other films that I've made, for me, it's all about trying to, instead of jamming the issue down people's throat, is trying to get people to fall in love with the people who are fighting for these issues. So that's sort of what we did here, is try to, you know, we follow this Russian tiger man of Russia, Pavel Fomenko, who is just an incredible character. And he's not always serious all the time. He jokes and he laughs like human beings do. And same with Jay, you know, he's this cute little kid. So it's all about sort of tricking the audience into caring through the characters as opposed to jamming the issue down people's throats. So that's sort of something I feel is important.
I'll just say one other thing. Now that you've seen a clip from each of the 2 really central stories in the film, I think what a brilliant thing that they did was tell a story that is really present and verite-driven in Pavel's story, and also a historical story about, you know, you met his great-grandson in that clip, but you know, somebody who's been really central to India successfully protecting a lot of tigers. And so by covering that territory, it covers the issue and the sort of question of what's happening with tigers through characters. And so, you know, it's sort of solved both at once. And so I think when you see the whole film, you'll see that you'll come out of the theater feeling like you understand. I mean, you watch it, you can speak to it, but I think without having a lot of cards and a lot of, you know, telling you what's going on, kind of, you know, sort of issue-driven film techniques. And I think that's, you know, a pretty incredible accomplishment.
We're also, I don't mean to talk about the elephant in the room, but the tiger in the room, which is, we asked Ross to film a tiger that you can't find. The hardest part of this entire project is, you know, at this given time, there's about, you know, just under 4,000 tigers left in the wild, and the majority of them are in India. There's about 550 in Russia. And so, we sent Zan and Ross off to the other side of the world to try to find literally like a needle in a haystack. And miraculously, they found tigers, wild tigers in both locations.
There's a lot of tigers in this film.
Which is, for me, even just as somebody waiting back here, stateside to see what was going to come back, it had to be character-driven because we didn't know if we would even see tigers. And so it is a little bit of a miracle that it did work out, and the wildlife also participated. But that was we didn't know. I mean, that was one of the hardest things about making a film about tigers. We might not see them at all.
If there are any questions, can you raise your hand? And if not, I always have tons of questions, so we could keep going. In the back? I'll rephrase the question.
First of all,
Did
can you
everyone hear
inform-
that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The woman in the back mentioned that she didn't expect to cry so early in the morning and wants to know when this movie is coming out, which I also want to know.
Well, first of all, thank you, and your check will be in the mail. And can you come to every screening? That's wonderful. There we go.
We don't have a date yet, so I would say in terms of broadcast, probably middle of next year, it'll be broadcast, and the rollout plan is otherwise TBD in terms of festivals and stuff like that. We're working on it now.
And I may be incorrect, but it's currently called Tigerland. If she wants to track it, could she search for like hashtag Tigerland and Discovery or something?
I mean,
So
at the point it's called Tigerland.
Could change.
Maybe that'll stick, maybe it won't, but you'll be able
Follow
to.
Project Cat, hashtag Project Cat. You can also text Tiger to 707070. We'll be updating everybody on everything happening with tigers. We have
Okay.
another tiger bag coming out soon, too.
There
so
we have
If
it.
you need a new bag.
Any other questions over here?
Curious about the how you guys use animation or archival in film, and who you guys, is that through Radical, or how do you guys handle that?
So she wants to hear about the animation and the archival and how you handle that, and what role did Radical play in that?
Well, this is the first time I've had anything to do with animation or archival, and it was painful for me, just because I wasn't used to the process. Or let me rephrase that: it is painful for me. But we found.
I'm sure it's also painful for others around you.
Yeah. Zan,
Would you like to come up to the stage?
It's been tough, but anyway, I think it's been worth the effort and the pain and suffering. But we just found an animator. We actually found an animator. We were actually our editor put some rough temp animation in, and it worked beautifully. So we said, "Who's that animator?" And it was a man named Daniel Souza, and he did a film called Feral, which was nominated for an Oscar.
Called Feral?
Feral, yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So, and archival, I don't know, do you want to speak to archival? Come up here, speak to archival.
Talk about the trunks.
Oh, the trunk, okay. So we're in India, and I'm freaking out because there's this guy named Kailash Sankla, and we don't have any pictures of him, we don't have any footage of him, we just have his grandson and his great-grandson talking about him, but they don't really know that much about him, and it was really tough, and I didn't know what we were gonna do. And then on one of the last days we were there, yeah, we're in the jungle, and we're at they have a lodge, and we were asking every day, is there anything, is there any footage, is there any archival? And then finally Jay's dad goes, "Oh, I have some trunks in my house. I don't know what's in them, but they're Kailashes." He brings out one trunk, and it's the trunk in there that's in the film, and like our jaws dropped. I said, the last day. So we scrambled and we shot all this footage and it turned out to be incredible. So we basically had all that shipped to America, and yeah, we've been using.
See, all I heard was there were the trunks. I never heard the first part of that.
Never heard the story.
It was yeah. It was.
There are some
a little
filmmaking
scary.
morals
No, it
there,
was.
which I could sum up, which is keep your challenges in check as it relates to your network, and like don't ever stop asking the same question.
that's right.
'Cause you might someday get a different answer if you keep at it. Yeah.
But I think also what you can see just from this clip, and it continues throughout, especially the India story. I mean, I think the challenge, the way I look at it, from where I sit, is that the challenge of a really incredible character in verite balanced against a historical story driven by archival, that's like a huge challenge. And so, you know, the way that they treat the archival, which was there from the first rough cut I saw, is just beautiful. And there's never just an image. It's always treated, it's always thought through how you should see it. I think you can see it just in that few minutes, and it transforms the viewing experience from a, you know, you don't feel like you're watching an archival story, you feel like you're watching a story. And I feel like that is why it works, because otherwise I think you would be like, you know, having trouble when you're not in Russia because you're looking at historical images, and but the animation as well really drives it.
Ross, do you feel like, I'm not going to ask you the question you asked me not to ask you, which is how you figured out how to have a dead character and a living character like coexist. But
I still don't know the answer.
I know, because I'm not asking you that. That was just the one I'm not supposed to
Stay
ask.
tuned.
No, but I want to ask more. Like,
We're getting
so
there.
again, like I think what John's talking about is like a main character in the film who feels very present and alive is actually died in what year?
1994.
In 1994. So I just, again, because you deal with humans and usually living humans.
Hopefully.
Can you talk about like
I almost
that?
killed some of my characters, but that's different.
But like just how you maybe got to that solution of what John was just talking about. Which is to use animation or to treat that material not like as you'd seen in other archival films, maybe.
Well, I mean, in terms of the animation, it's funny how films sort of morph and they change, and you have to be responsive to what the film is telling you. And at first, we had this idea of animation being sort of spotlighting the literature and the mythology of the tiger and the culture of the tiger. And this was supposed to be beautiful animation interspersed with these. We actually had like four. We were going to follow four different stories. But we were in Russia, and we had this incredible character, Pavel, and he could be a film unto himself. So we had that, and then we went to India, and you saw what we had. And at a certain point, it became clear that it's not going to be these disparate characters and animation sort of bridging them. We had to sort of figure things out. And so we do have some animation serving that function, but this animation, which I never was keen on, like, recreating a story through animation. But we really wanted to do it in sort of a beautiful, impressionistic way. And yeah, like I said, it's been hard because I've been such a pain in the ass about it. Like, it feels like recreation, we have to, but I think it's coming out well. Am I answering your question at all? Or am I
feel
just rambling?
satisfied. Yeah.
So anyway.
One more question in the back. Yes.
I think I recognize that voice. Hi, Harry. That's my son. Hi. I don't know the difference between frogs and birds, no. But I'm learning. Anyway.
And thank you, Harry, for making
Yes,
your
thank
father
you.
care about tigers. We
Hi,
appreciate
Addie.
it.
Hi, Harry.
1 minute. One more question. One more question.
One more question. Any more questions, Harry? Go ahead.
Harry.
Go ahead. What's mixed up? I just don't know the difference between their sounds. Will you leave me alone?
Jessica.
I'm just kidding. Don't leave me alone. I love you.
For both Jessica and Ross, and John too, but these two.
It's okay. It's okay.
What did you, in researching
Do you want to repeat that?
Yeah. The question is for Jessica and Ross in what they learned, what they've come across in this journey, each of their own journeys that might surprise us about tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, I think one thing that I knew about just from our research, but I think it happens somewhat in the film, not to give too much away, but one of the reasons why tigers are so vulnerable is they're one of the only species where they need to be taken care of, cubs need to be taken care of by their mothers until they're 18 months old. They really can't survive on their own, and it really is their mother's job to feed them and protect them and keep them safe. And, it is somewhat the luck of the story that, it is a tigress and her cubs that they run across in Russia. And that very sort of human connection that Pavel has, in saying, this is one of my brothers basically being killed. You really see this and what happens with these cubs and with their mother, and that what the separation causes them, and that it's just so relatable. And as Ross's son is here, I also have a child. There's just something that is so relatable about how human and other species are so connected. And I know for myself, in seeing it, I knew about it, but in seeing it in the characters and the tiger characters in this film, you really feel, you feel for this mother that at a point is separated, and you feel for the hope of the reconnection. And so that, for me, really brought home something that I talk about and know intellectually, but it didn't. It's just so human. It was really surprising for me.
John and Ross?
Oh, I mean, I think, so one, just like a factoid thing that I think, it doesn't really end up playing a major role in the film, but there's, you know the numbers, but there's way more tigers in captivity than in the wild in the world, which I had no idea.
There's more than 5,000 tigers in captivity in Texas.
Just in Texas.
Just in Texas.
Yeah.
And there's 4,000 in the wild.
Less than 4,000 in the wild across 13 countries.
So if there's Florida man,
Yeah.
there's Texas tiger. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
crazy.
It's
how many
pretty
are in
insane.
Texas, and that, like, I had no idea about that. And also in the film, something that really is in the film is this notion that in Russia, where there's been a huge poaching problem fueling the Chinese market, that really the fall of the USSR and the sort of economic collapse that came out of it fueled this incredible rise in poaching, which is like really sort of delicately presented in the film as in a way that you sort of understand why the problem's there, but also sort of have humanity for, human connection with the poachers who are just trying to get to the next day. So that I didn't really have any knowledge of where this problem comes from, and that was sort of fascinating to learn.
Like I said before, when Harry came and had cut out tigers, and I started noticing half his books are about tigers, half these children's books, and then I started seeing tigers everywhere, and I started seeing brands, and I didn't really understand how immersed and how important tigers are to people, and how we love the tiger. I had no clue, and that was that is wonderful to learn, and it's really a big part of the film.
Well, and I'll say, to the point of the notes, I think one of the things that I was pushing greatest is the message that tigers are everywhere except for where they're supposed to be. And that part of falling in love, that when you realize that, your kid's soccer team, the tiger, and your kid who dressed up as a tiger for Halloween, and your favorite cereal, and where you fill your gas, and, when you took your kid to the zoo, and their favorite piece, that we need to ensure that there are tigers for our children's children and for the future. And I think you guys did such a brilliant job. You guys weren't lucky enough to see that here, but all of the footage you've been able to pull in and from different cultures, it is really powerful. And it's sometimes people just need to be woken up to realize that something you love about is actually endangered. And it's a different message than just saying we might lose tigers. It's a much deeper message of something that's so, like, what if they were gone? What would we all do? It would be a very different planet we lived on.
Yay.
That's a good way to end. I like that.
That's a mic drop.
Well, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. Oh, the audience filled up. This is good. Yeah. Hi, Harry Bear. Come on down, Harry. Come on stage.
Bye.